I will take just a quick moment to introduce the rest of the folks on stage. Joining me to my left is our District Administrator, Rich Dahman. Immediate to my left is our newest school board member, Jennifer Johns, that if you don't know, we just elected at our last meeting to fill a vacancy for us. And to my right is Rick Mullen, and then Shelley Kroll-Hankey, and Michael Hoffman, and Brian Quapple, and to my far right, Dave Holterman. So the 7 board members and the administrator are the folks on stage for you. I'll beg your pardon if I'm squinting because the bright lights have me not exactly sure who's all beyond out there. This is a little like church. If you come late, you have to sit in front. Please sit wherever you are comfortable. I hope that you can see. We should have plenty of space for folks to social distance, etc. Show of hands. How many of you, is this your first annual school board meeting? Okay, we have a few. This will be different in a couple of respects. It is not a meeting of the school board per se, but a meeting of the electors, that's you, of the school district. A couple orders of business. We'll have our administrative folks give you an overview of our district, both operationally and financially, and talk about a proposed budget and an associated tax levy. Those are some tasks we have before us tonight to approve those, or hopefully approve those. And we also have to, if we choose to, set a salary for the board members and give us the discretion to set a future annual meeting date. So that's what's going to happen agenda-wise. Immediately following this meeting, we have a regular school board meeting where the school board will conduct sort of normal course of business things that we have. That's kind of a brief agenda tonight. You're welcome to stay for that if you would choose. Having said that, we will start tonight the way we start every board meeting. I'm going to ask you to join me in a salute to our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. One other slight difference for our annual meeting relative to a regular board meeting is it does not necessarily have to be chaired by the board president. So our next order of business is to elect a meeting chairperson.
I'll make a motion to elect Joe Martin meeting chair.
Second.
Okay. Actually, I was going to open nominations, Rick. If you would amend that to a nomination, you probably need to do that.
I'd like to amend my motion to nominate.
You're not making a motion. You're nominating.
I will nominate
Thank you.
Joe Martin to be meeting chair.
Are there any other nominations to chair the meeting? And third and final call. If there are no other, we could have a motion to close and cast a unanimous ballot for the only nominee, which happens to be me. Now,
I'll make a motion to close nominations and elect Joe Martin meeting chair.
I will second it again.
okay, now it's properly moved and seconded to close and cast a unanimous ballot to have Joe Martin chair the meeting. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? It will be my pleasure to chair the rest of the annual meeting. Having done so, we have to approve our agenda, which you have a copy of, I presume, on the way in. But as a formality, we have to approve that agenda the way you see it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second. Thank you. Motion from Mike, seconded by Dave, I believe, to approve the agenda. Any questions? Otherwise, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? The agenda is approved. Feel free, folks, to act on any of these business matters that you are so inclined. The motions do not necessarily have to come from board members. Quite honestly, we are up here right now in our capacity as community residents. rather than myself chairing the meeting. So while they certainly can make motions, likewise the audience can do the same. Okay, having done that, our new business starts with a district overview, and Rich Dahman is going to give us a look back and review of what the school district has done in the previous year.
I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us tonight. And if people are watching this on the recording, thank you for viewing this information. We wanted to share some information about our schools, about some capital improvements that have taken place over the past year, and about some of the opportunities that we've had over the last year and opportunities that we have moving forward. The first slide is a list of our schools and the different grade levels that it serves. We have the 2018-19 enrollment listed on this slide because that was the last enrollment that was officially certified by the state. But last year's enrollment, the 19-20 school year, was down a little bit from this enrollment. The 18-19, if you add those up, it's, I believe, 3,479 students. In the 19-20 school year, we were down 62 students, and it's unofficial right now for this year, but our enrolled number of students in our schools so far at this point has bounced back up to very close to where it was in the 18-19 school year. I'm going to turn things over here to Carrie Bradley to share some information about our capital improvements over the course of the year and some of our plans for upcoming capital improvements. So I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Business Services, Carrie Bradley.
Hello, and can you hear me?
Lean in close. I think you're on.
I'm on? I'm on, but I'm not on. I guess you're not. Am I muted? There we go. So with virtual meeting world, I find I use the mute button a lot, but I don't think I'll be terribly effective tonight if I use the mute button. So unmuted, here we go. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm one of those weird geeky people that gets excited about the annual meeting. So thank you for bearing with me in my enthusiasm over the one meeting a year where the electors run the show. And so Superintendent Dahman had talked about our enrollment and our 7 buildings that we have. And so I want to follow up and talk about how the Board of Education plans to care for those 7 buildings as well as the district office. And so we want to talk about capital improvement and our plans for capital improvements. And there are basically 3 ways that we are going to be talking about capital improvements. One that you are aware of if you have attended the meeting before, and for the new people, the district for years has had a living document, which is a capital improvement plan. And it has a 5-year cycle, and every year the facilities are reviewed, facility needs are reviewed, and projects are prioritized with that 5-year capital improvement plan. This year, the Board of Education also started a long-term capital improvement plan, which was required so that we could begin saving money for the future. And that plan is a 10-year plan, and in addition to our facilities, we also added technology needs to the plan. And then the last thing we're going to talk a bit about is the facility referendum projects, which is probably one of the more exciting things going on in our district as far as improvements to learning spaces as well as additions to learning spaces. So just very briefly, the next slide is just an example of the capital maintenance and improvement plan in the living document. And then for 1920, approximately $900,000 was invested, and this isn't referendum money, this is general fund dollars. General operating fund dollars were used for maintaining facilities. And if you want to learn more about that, this was approved by the Board of Education in March of 2019. And as I had mentioned now, we're also working on long-term improvement needs. And I know these are very teeny and you can't see them and they're not intended for you to be able to read. They're just an example that we have the plan for facilities. And then the blue one is a plan for technology. And so we added 5 years to the facilities plan, if you will, to take a longer view, and then also worked on identifying technology needs. And if you wish to research those further, those were approved by the boards as well in this year, in April. And then finally, the other way that capital improvements have happened in our district is the $59.9 million facilities referendum. And at a very high level, I can tell you that the construction is about 25% or a quarter complete. The elementary K-3 buildings were ready to open the first day of school and are nearing completion. And I just want to pause for a moment and recognize the hard work of all of the people that were working to make school, the facilities available for school to start on time. It included the work of our contractors, the work of Stephen Shantz, our teachers, our principals, everybody pitched in so that the schools would be ready to start in a timely manner. The middle school and high school projects are underway, and through the wonders of video technology, we have prepared a very short time-lapse video so that you can see the project in action. And this is at the high school, and it is the area around the pool.
Thank you for sharing that information on our capital improvement projects, Carrie, and the video. A lot of progress on our projects across the district. The middle school and high school are continuing, and everything is looking good so far. As an additional update on what's happening in our schools and in our different departments, we asked all of our principals and directors to share a little bit about opportunities that we have. It's been obviously a very unique last 8 months or so, not only across our school district, but across the entire state, country, and across the world. And it has had a significant impact on education. And we've looked at these challenges that have been raised and viewed them as opportunities. Opportunities for us to look at the things we do, determine how we can continue to get better at what we do, and maintain that high quality education for all of our students. So to share some information with you from each of our schools and each of our departments, we've prepared another video. So we can go ahead and cue the video.
Hello, this is Superintendent Rich Donlin, and I want to welcome all of you to our annual meeting. The past school year has had many challenges, but by working together, we've turned them into opportunities, ways in which we can continue to grow as a school district. As we start a new year, we continue to balance our guiding principles of limiting the risk to the safety of our students, staff, and community, while continuing to provide a high-quality education for all students. We're now going to hear from our principals and directors as they highlight how their schools and departments have turned these challenges into opportunities.
Buildings and grounds rule, it's been a another busy year. We were able to get the elementary school additions and remodels completed, and we're ready to go for when the kids came back. We were also able to take advantage of the opportunity to move forward a couple of the building's construction schedules. We also had an added challenge this year to be able to continue to adapt and change the way the buildings and grounds staff is able to change their techniques to continue to keep our building staff and students safe for the upcoming school year.
The Human Resources Department has improved its new hire onboarding from 2+ hours for the initial meeting down to about 20 to 30 minutes for the follow-up meeting, in order to review the paperwork and address any questions the new hires may have. The HR team has created 48 screencasts that explain how to complete the necessary paperwork and learn about benefits from the comfort of their own home. This improved process helps save time for the employee and the Human Resources Department while maintaining the opportunity for staff to ask questions they may have related to their pay and benefits.
Opportunities to grow by connecting. Hi, I'm Susan Probst, the Director of Student Services. The C in Connect stands for collaborate. This opportunity has created chances for us to collaborate with each other. The O stands for options. We have created more options for students to be successful. The N stands for narrowing our focus. We have zeroed in on what is most important. The N stands for negotiate. There's been lots of give and take to figure out what's the best path forward. The E stands for entrust. Entrust means to commit to the future to another with confidence. Our future looks brighter. The C stands for contribute. Many have contributed to a brighter tomorrow. And when we embrace the challenges and the opportunities before us, we get to the last letter in connect, and that's T for thrive. Our students will thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. As we grow, they grow.
Hello, my name is Ryan Ruggles. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction, and I'm happy to share lots of great opportunities and areas of growth that we've had over the last year. We've done some amazing things. We have a lot of things to be proud of here in Milton, in the world of teaching and learning. In the spring, we're so proud of our staff, our students, and our community, and the response to remote learning and virtual learning. It really was amazing to see some of the engaging lessons and phenomenal ways that everybody responded during that time. That really led and continued into the summer with some brand new summer school opportunities where we did summer school virtually, which was a really cool opportunity for lots of families, and they were very happy about. That has led into the fall with some really good teacher PD around technology, around our PLCs, to get us ready for where we are right now. Face-to-face, virtual, and hybrid, good things are happening in Milton. Lots of opportunities.
This past year has been an opportunity for us to grow. Here with technology in the School District of Milton, we have grown our offerings to students by sending school district iPads and MacBooks home during the summer, providing an opportunity for our students to extend their learning options and improve their technology skills during a time outside of typical instruction. We have also grown our technology service and support by providing technology department contact information directly to students and families at home, giving both students and families access to high-quality technical support. Watch for more things we have in store for this year as we continue to grow.
We had the opportunity this past year to work closely with our community partners at the Milton Food Pantry, the One Apple Lunch Bunch, and Go Right Way. These organizations were an integral part in helping us get our food to our students and families this spring. We also had the opportunity to provide more fresh veggies in our K-3 buildings this past school year. This next school year, we plan on continuing that and adding more fresh fruits district-wide. Thank you for your continued support of the nutrition program.
This past year has been a year with lots of
opportunities to grow. And Harmony and Consolidated, our buildings grew, and that provided us lots of opportunities to branch out and do things in different ways, as well as learning to grow with our instructional strategies by teaching students virtually. We also worked on building new connections with families by doing virtual parent group meetings, lots of videos, and other ways to engage families in the virtual world.
Learning opportunities that we had here at Milton East in the year of 2020. We've had to make plans to keep students and staff safe, at the same time, make an environment as welcoming as we can with new safety rules, which doesn't allow us to do things like we used to. We've learned to be very flexible, and I think the bottom line is we've learned that we need to rethink and rework things that maybe at one time we took for granted.
This past year has been an opportunity for us to grow. Here at Milton West, we've grown physically by adding additional classrooms and restrooms to our building. These spaces were ready for student and staff use on the first day of this 2021 school year. We've also grown in our connections with staff and students. Moving to 100% virtual in the spring moved all of us outside of our comfort zones. Being back in person has also allowed us to use all of the learning that we have done through our responsive classroom studies here at Milton West, and we have used that work to help us focus on building relationships with our students back here in person. Having the smaller cohorts here allows us to do that, while our virtual teachers are making connections with our virtual students as well. We're going to continue to grow throughout this entire school year.
This past year has certainly given us all an opportunity to grow, and here at Northside, we've grown by redoubling our efforts to identify and focus on the most essential academic and social-emotional skills and standards that we want to ensure that every child has mastered. And additionally, focusing on relationships and ensuring that every child feels like they're a member of our school community has been a gift of 2020.
This past year has been an opportunity for us to grow. Here at Milton Middle School, we've grown by a creative interview process to welcome new employees at our building. This includes some video opportunities for screening and questions, and allows us to meet our candidates even before they walk through our doors for the formal interview. Another way that we have grown here at Milton Middle School is our refocus on social-emotional learning for both staff and students to begin the year. We are really working hard on taking care of one another and keeping in mind that we're all doing the best that we can.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Miller. I'm the principal at Milton High School 2019-20. Obviously a year with challenges, but a lot of successes and positives as well. For example, the advanced placement test scores since last spring, despite the virtual learning, we had over 400 AP tests taken with a 76% pass rate. That actually means that over 900 college credits were earned by Milton High School students, actually a 5-year high. In transcripted credit, those students taking Blackhawk Tech classes at Milton High School, were 240 students enrolled in the program where they got tech school credit. 120 students in a work-based credit program as well this last year, 28 of which earning youth apprenticeships. New programs happening this last year, for example, the Project Lead the Way engineering curriculum was our first year implementation of that with a lot of success, as well as the JEDI curriculum, that's our new online learning platform. We were very pleased this last fall when we received our state report card. Milton High School had its highest state report card ever, number one high school in Rock County. As well as athletics and activities, successes as well. Over 400 high school students took advantage of at least one sport. We had over 50 activities offered for our students at Milton High School. Some challenges, obviously, at the end of the year. Things had to be changed, things like our graduation ceremony, but we're excited about the future. We're excited about the construction of the high school. We're excited about the new STEM wing, which we should see it by the end of this next year. Lots of positives moving forward. So as we are moving into our new blended learning model, we're excited for the future, but excited for the opportunities as well that we can offer students right now.
I want to thank all of our building and district-wide administrators for putting that together, and for our Carrie Club and our tech team for their work on that video. And we hope that people enjoyed seeing some of the highlights and opportunities that we have as we move forward. I did not have anything else on the district overview, so I'm going to turn things back over to Carrie Bradley, unless there's any questions or comments from anyone on the district overview.
Okay, ready to roll. I'm glad you had an opportunity to enjoy seeing people and seeing my colleagues before we dive into the financial report, and then we're also going to dive into the budget as well. And so what I did to prepare for today was I tried to achieve balance, to make sure that I'm sharing enough information with you, but I know there's people out there that always want more. So in addition to the presentation I'm doing, there is a supplemental financial information that is available. It's in Word docs, and I think there were copies available on the table when you came in. So as I'm presenting, I'm going to try and stay at as high level as I can, but if you want to dig deeper into the budget, that information is there for you as well. So that being said, we'll start with the financial report, and this is high-level information about our district's finances. And so the first page I want to start with is our financial report for year ending June 30th, 2020. As you may or may not know, our fiscal year begins July 1 and ends June 30th. So in the business office, we celebrate New Year's on July 1st, and we come to work on New Year's. But if you'd like to come celebrate with us, feel free. So anyway, that being said, okay, fund balance. We begin with our fund balance on July 1, and we had over 66 million in fund balance. And what fund balance is cash and investments that we have, and also money that we are owed, which would be receivables, taxes that we have yet to collect that come in August is one example. Sometimes we are also owed money by the state as well. So we begin with our beginning fund balance, and then we add our receipts or our revenues, subtract our disbursements or expenditures to get to our ending fund equity of about, was it $54,865,000. Then below that, I have broken out the different funds because we have different funds in the district. And the first one there's two here I'd like to just touch, actually three if you'll bear with me, touch on. The general fund, it has about 7.9 million, and that is our day-to-day operations of the district. We recently talked about cash flow borrowing and things of that nature. That is when we're talking about fund balance in the general fund. The debt service fund has a little over $1 million in it, and we need to have that because we're going to need to make a payment in the fall before our new tax receipts come in. And then the capital projects fund, which we have talked about quite a bit, still has remaining balance to finish up the elementaries and then do the middle school and high school projects. The next piece that I want to talk about is our outstanding debt issue. And so if you recall, we said that we have about over 45 million in the capital projects fund. Okay, this debt was issued, and that is the source of those funds when we issued debt. The initial issue was 59.9, and we got a note, and then that got refinanced into a 20-year bond, which is a common practice to get a better value on your interest rate. Just as a note, you can tell by the table then that the debt will be paid off in 2039, and as of June 30th, we still have about $56 million outstanding. There is an interesting note here that I'm going to make, and that's per state statute, we're allowed to borrow up to 10% of our equalized value, and our equalized property value here is a little less than $2 billion. So The district has the authority, if I did my math right, and there's a couple math people here so they can correct me if I'm wrong, but we could borrow up to $200,000. You're not correcting me, you're supposed to say much, right? It's $200 million, right?
Yes.
All right, they're paying attention, very good. Okay, the next slide that we want to talk about is the Employee Benefit Trust. It is Fund 73, and we need to tell you the status of that trust fund on an annual basis. And since it is a trust fund, the district cares for the money, but the money really is money owed to employees for retirement benefits. And so I'm just going to let you read the numbers for yourself, if that's all right. And just understand that we have it, and it is for retiree benefits. And then the next slide, we had talked about our district before, and so I kind of look at this as our district and where we live. In addition to where we live, there's a list of the different municipalities that people live in, but the financial connection here is the percent of district property value that they make up the district, or our tax base, if you will. So you can see that between the city of Janesville, the city of Milton, and the town of Harmony, that's about 2/3 of our equalized property, and then the rest of municipalities continue to make up our tax base. So I'm ready to move on to the budget presentation. I don't have the light blinding me, and I'm not getting a lot of feedback here, so I'm just going to keep going. All right, a couple nods once in a while. I got Chris back there. Okay. So that being said, as I said before, thank you for coming to the annual meeting, and also to let you know that I'm excited to present the budget. I appreciate your interest in the district and the district's budget and our finances. Before we dive into the budget itself, I just want to talk about some school finance basics, and because there are things that help you understand what I'm going to be talking about further. So there's three things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the revenue limit calculation, state equalization aid, and not much, but we have to talk about fund accounting and descriptions, so that when you look at the information I'm presenting, it makes sense. Got a nod, thank you. All right, so revenue limits are also called spending caps. And in Wisconsin, they were put in place in the mid-90s, and among other things, the goal was to control property taxes. In our district, about 85% of our revenues and our resources are controlled by the revenue limit, and it's sources from two places: our local property tax and general state aid. The current year's limit is always based on prior year data, and student membership drives the formula. And when I talk about student membership, I'm talking about full-time equivalencies, not the enrollment that Rich was talking about. So we're going to plant seeds on school finance. You're all going to go home saying, I know the difference between enrollment and membership. All right. This is the last year that we have our additional $2.5 million in revenue authority from a non-recurring referendum that was passed in 2016, and that is set to expire. And as you may be aware, the renewal of that referendum is on the ballot. And so what set to expire means is that it's not going to impact this year's budget, the vote in November, or this year's tax levy or tax bill, but it's going to affect our 2021 budget and then the levy in the fall of 2021. But that's not the levy that we're talking about tonight. I'll just give you a heads up how the mechanics of the system work. So if you can go to the revenue limit calculation, the first line, just to be, as I said, we start with membership, and it's a 3-year average. And then there's an amount per pupil that we are allowed, and that's how we get our base revenue. Then in addition to our base revenue, there's exemptions to the limit. And you can see the first one listed is the $2.5 million for the final year. And then there are several other exemptions built in. And those are added to the base to get us to $37,720,000. And this is the amount of money that we are going to get from property taxes and general aid. The revenue limit calculation is district specific, and every district has their own calculation, and what one district does not impact another school district. But the next thing that I want to talk about is equalization aid, and that is a very different story, because every district affects every other district. What one district does with their spending affects another district, because we are all competing for the same the same pie, if you will, pot of money, appropriation. Okay, so that is where one district affects another district, and it's based on the district's ability to fund expenditures, and that is based. The phrase that's used is as measured by its property wealth per member. And so people have a lot of reactions to property wealth being used as a measure, but for the purposes of equalization aid, that's the measure. The fundamental purpose of aid is to level the playing field, or basically provide the same property tax base per student. So if you don't have it in your local property wealth per student, then the state backfills with equalization aid. And they share in the cost of educating children. So how does this work in Milton? And so the next slide shows, it's got some jargon in there, but we'll work through it. Okay. It says that our total shared cost per member is $9,900. And so, and then based on our property values, we get, of that $9,900, we get $6,000 in equalization aid from the state, and $3,800 in local support, and that's the tax levy. So I don't know if you've heard the phrase, but I think I have said, and I think this demonstrates it, that generally speaking, for every dollar that we spend, 60 cents comes from the state and 40 cents comes from our local taxpayers. So, and finally, we're going to put the fun in fund accounting, which is a DPI joke that you guys aren't finding amusing, but it really works well with a group of business managers. That when you're looking at the financial information, there's a prescribed system that we need to use to report the information to you, and then we also need to use GAAP accounting. And the takeaway here is that each fund has a specific purpose and a specific set of regulations. And then in that supplement that I had mentioned, I put descriptions of the functions, because that's one where it's a little less obvious what it is. So there's more information in the back of that booklet if you need it. So that being said, I want to move on to the presentation of the budget. And I am here to present the budget that the Board of Ed has approved for your consideration and hearing. We're going to review the budget by fund. We're going to look at revenue sources, and then expenditure purposes. And then, as I said, I have additional information in that supplement if you want to dig deeper. And then finally, we're going to review the tax levy. And then at the conclusion, there's a separate point in the meeting where you will have an opportunity to vote the levy. So the first fund that we're going to talk about is the general fund. It's considered an instructional fund, and it's used to account for the day-to-day cost of our school district activities. Okay. When you look at the slide, it's a very, very high level here, but there's a couple takeaways that I want you to have, okay? And one of them is that we have a balanced budget. And so you're going to think, well, I think you probably know by looking at this, how can I tell this is a balanced budget? And even though you know, I'm just going to walk through it. So there's two ways that you can tell it's a balanced budget. The first one is to go to the ending fund balance line and compare 1920 to 2021. Because if you remember before when we talked about the district finances, how we calculated that, if my revenues and expenditures equal each other, then my fund balance will not change. The other way that you can look at this is to look at the total revenues that are bolded and total expenditures, and you will see that they are the same. So I would like to first talk about the sources of our revenues. And you have them listed here, and the descriptions are actually pretty good. And the 100, 200, 300, 500 are the woofer codes that tell you what the source is. But to make it a little bit easier, I took that information and put it in a pie chart. And you can see that our largest sources are from the state and local dollars, and that we get about 1% of our revenues from the federal government. The next thing I want to talk about is on the expenditure side. We talk about the purpose of the funds. What is the purpose of the funds? And purpose in the school finance accounting world is described by the function, which is the 100,000 function, which is instruction. And I just put a little description up there as to what instructional activities are. But when you're using these codes, they are related to activities provided by teachers or under the guidance of school staff. I have examples. A classroom is the easiest one. Math class is another easy one. And then the other one that people sometimes don't realize is co-curriculars are also instructional. So there's a bunch of numbers that go when we fill in all those digits, but they all roll up to the 100,000. The next place to look at is support services. And again, you can see the list. These are things that are related to supporting students and teachers in the educational setting. And they include library services, supervision, business services and administration services, transportation. And then finally, there's this non-program transactions, which is a 400,000 function. And that is for interfund transfers and payments for instructional services and tuition. So when we're looking at that 400,000 function, part of the cost of our staff is in there because we contract with teachers on call for substitute teachers. And rather than coding them to the 100,000, which is instruction, they force us to code them to the 400,000 as a payment for an instructional service. And then the other piece that's in the 400,000 bucket is tuition and then interfund transfers. Because sometimes you transfer money from one fund to another. If you go to the pie chart, I can talk functions all day long and people tell me, yeah, but what are you buying, right? Yeah, okay, instruction, but what are you buying? So the pie chart is intended to tell you what you are buying. And you are paying for employees, and purchase services are our largest portion of the pie. So Fund 10 is the general fund, day-to-day operations. Fund 20 are special projects funds, and we have two things happening in Fund 20. We have a Fund 21, which is a gift fund, and we're moving our student activities to there as well. And then we also have Fund 27, which is for the excess cost of implementing IEPs and providing special education services to children. And if I look at the special education funds expense, you can see that the majority of it, the blue is employees, and the pinky orange is purchase services. Fund 30 is a debt service fund. We have only referendum approved debt now. There is also an option to have non-referendum approved, but we are on voter approved debt. And the revenues come from majority our tax levy and also interest earnings. And then our expenditures are the principal and interest payments on the debt, originally the 59.9 million. So every year we work to pay down that debt. And then the money is available for us to spend in the capital projects fund. So if we go to the Fund 40, the money that we're paying back in the debt service fund was placed in the capital projects fund, and we are using it to build the projects. And so 49 is used to account for the proceeds of that borrowing. And then also, as I had mentioned, we started just a little bit of savings for the future to get our a trust fund going for future projects. And We started out with $100 because there's a waiting period before we can access the money. So we got it started, and then as the years progress, we can accumulate that money, and then it will be available after the waiting period. Fund 50 is used to account for activities in the district's food service area. And in 1920, you can see the COVID impact on our revenues and reduced sales. When you look at the revenues, they're not part of our typical pattern, and it's going to be an asterisk year for food service, and we will see if 2021 ends up also being an anomaly, but we did have an impact there. And then the next fund is a community service fund, and that is for MREC, recreational programs, and also the Shilberg Community Park. That fund is supported with tax levy and user fees. The last fund, let's get excited, the last fund we're going to talk about is the Cooperative Programs Fund. And that's Fund 90. And what that does is it's used to account for our cooperative program that we have with Edgerton. It is MECAS, it's the Alternative High School Program, and we are the fiscal agent for that program. And so that's instructional fund representing the costs of MECAS that Edgerton participates in. And if you remember before when I talked about the 400,000 being interfund transferred, our portion of MECAS is an interfund transfer from 10 to 99. And then finally, we get to the slide that talks about all fund expenditures. And what it does is it obviously adds up all the funds that we talked about, and then it compares year to year. And so for comparison purposes, I took the total expenditures. The interfund transfers that I've been talking about, you need to back those out, otherwise you're double counting an expense. So the interfund transfers are backed out. We did a refinancing of that original note that I talked about in 1920. So that would make 1920 look odd, so that is backed out as well. And then I also backed out the capital projects funds, because those aren't our typical experience. So if we're going to compare a year to a year, it gets us a little closer to comparing apples to apples. And then finally, we have the tax levy impact. And you can see that between 1920 and 2021, our levy is going up about $840,000, and about $700,000 of that is related to the voter-approved debt payments. So I thank you for your attention and your patience, and this concludes my presentation. And then I believe our next step is to go to the budget hearing portion.
Does anyone have any questions for Carrie?
Or comments are welcome. I believe you're welcome to come to the podium here.
Carrie, Frank Waffle behind you. I have one question for you. So it appears that our mill rate is going to go down a little bit. Did you, that was in, or have we not gotten to that slide yet?
I did not do a slide on mill rate. I put mill rate in the supplemental information, but we certainly can talk about it.
So it looks like the mill rate's going to go down about 8 cents, I think, I read from last year. One of the things that I looked at is that our equalized property value increased by about 5%. The total expenditures in our budget went up about 7% on that one slide, but yet our mill rate is going to go down. Can you explain how that works? I'm sure I'm missing some important number that just explain why that mill rate is actually going to go down a little bit.
Okay. I'm on page 4, if you grab the booklet in the back. And Brian, you mentioned like 3 or 4 different concepts here. So let's see. Let's just talk about the concepts you mentioned, okay? I think I heard you say that the mill rate's going down, but our total budget's going up. Correct? Right? Okay.
Yeah, in a nutshell, our mill rate's going down, our budget's going up, and our equalized property value went up, but not at the same rate as our budget.
Okay. So, I can do this, I'm just trying to figure out how I want to approach it. Okay. So first of all, what we want to talk about is that a budget is a plan at a point in time. And when we are looking at our equalized value, this is an estimate. We do not find out until October 1 what the actual number is. So that's groundwork number 1. Okay. Equalized value is the value of the property, of all the property in our district. Remember before when we had talked about the different municipalities, okay, and the portion that they are of the district. Equalized value is not assessed value. So you can bring this up, I gotta talk about this stuff, Brian. It's just the way it is. Okay, so as a district, we talk about equalized value. That's the world we live in. The Department of Revenue gives us this number, and that's what we use to apportion the levy between all those municipalities. The other piece of this is that when we get our state aid is based on our prior year expenditures. So there really isn't, I can't get to the relationship, Ryan, that you're talking about, because to me that's not the way the system works. So I'm trying to talk about pieces of the system. So we have an increase in our equalized value, and really our total levy mill rate is just the relationship between the dollars we're asking for, which on this chart is $19,251,392. Okay, that's the levy. And then the mill rate is the rate per thousand. So to me, the mill rate is just a calculation of this is the amount of money we're asking for, and this is the property value we have to distribute amongst, which comes up with that rate per thousand. Okay? But the levy is tied to how much equalization aid we get, which is tied to our prior year expenditures. Remember we talked about, I don't know, let's go to the revenue limit slide. No, that's all right, you don't have to, I'll just talk about it. Okay, so the revenue limit, if you recall, is the amount of money that we get between state aid and tax levy. So last year, we spent more because we took on debt, and that dollar of debt is aided at the same rate as a teacher's salary when it comes to equalization aid. So we increased our expenditures last year, and we got more aid. And so that's what's going to impact the tax levy as well. But I can't draw a direct correlation between the mill rate and the district budget. And in my head, that's not the way the system works, or maybe there's smarter people than me that can do it. I don't know, is that kind of what you were looking for, Brian? Is that how the system works?
No, I think I figured it out. So I think the reason why we're probably lower is because our equalized property value went up like 5% or whatever, but our total levy only went up like 4.5%. So I think that's why we went down a little bit. Okay, nope, I think I answered my question.
You answered your own question, and you all got to learn about school finance and how the system works.
Are there any other questions for Carrie relative to the financial data and or the budget? Seeing none, one of our tasks tonight is to approve the proposed tax levy that Carrie outlined for you. She's broken it down by the dollar values per fund. And there's a suggested motion out there that I will need someone to bring forward for us to act on it.
Mr. Chair, I have it from up in the booth. Michael Dorn making the motion. I move the district levy a tax of $15,308,120 for current school operations, $3,643,275 for referendum approved debt, and $300,000 for community services, for a total all-fund tax levy of $19,251,395.
I will second that.
Thank you. Motion from Mr. Dorn, who's our guiding hand up in the booth if you didn't miss that. Seconded by Rick Mullen to approve a referendum tax levy as he outlined. I will not reread it. You can all see it behind me. Are there any questions on that motion on the floor? Veterans of this meeting will know that we have voted this with a paper ballot in the past. We're going to not do that in light of the COVID environment. I'm going to try this with a voice vote, and if that is not sufficient for some folks, or if you want a division of the House, we can vote by hand if need be. So if there are no further questions on the motion on the floor, which is to approve the tax levy that you see behind me that we've just talked about and outlined, we will proceed to vote on that motion. And I would ask all in favor of that signify by saying aye. Aye. And anyone opposed, same sign. I will call that motion passed. Thank you. Okay, one next piece of new business is to potentially fix the salaries and authorize expenses of the board members, which by way of background for you folks is $2,000 a year for board members and $2,500 for the board president, and to reimburse expenses incurred by the board while traveling in performance of their duties. That we would like in a motion format too, so we can act on it.
I'd like to make a motion to fix salaries for board members and authorize expenses, add salaries for president $2,500 and all other board members $2,000.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion from Bob Collins, seconded by Tom Westrick, as you just heard, to approve salaries and authorized expenses for board members. Is there any discussion on that?
Just one, I'm going to not vote on this.
Okay, so noted. Any other comment or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? Thank you, that motion passes. We have one more piece of business. We are obligated to convene this once a year statutorily, and we are looking for a motion from the floor to allow the board to establish the date and time for the 2021 annual meeting.
Chair, I'll make a motion to allow the Board of Education to establish the date and time for the 2021 annual meeting as provided under section 120.08 of the Wisconsin statute.
And that is Ms. Sarah? Pardon me, I'm staring at the lights and you're all masked. So as you heard, motion from Rick Mullen, seconded by Stara Stuckey, to let the Board of Education establish the time and date of the next annual meeting for 2021. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? I call that motion passed also. That exhausts what we had on the agenda. This is the opportunity to entertain any other new business that someone would like to consider. And I'm not seeing anyone urgently rushing to the podium. So I will conclude that you don't have anything else that we're going to bring up. And at this juncture, we can adjourn this meeting. And as I mentioned, we will very soon afterwards convene a regular board meeting that you are welcome to stay and view if you choose to. And I am admonished to take and remind you that there are some treats available, and I'm assuming that's just outside the doors to the PAC here.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second. Motion from Rick, seconded by Mike, to adjourn this annual meeting of the Milton School District. Any other comments? Otherwise, all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you for coming.